been an effective senator?
No, I think the main thrust is a little bit different. If I could try to tell you what we have been trying to do in the campaign, is not to talk about every vote that he has made, but to talk about where he has been responsive to Tennessee and Tennesseans, and where he has not been responsive to us and to our needs in this state, where he has voted for consumers, where he hasn't voted for consumers, and we don't find many votes for consumers.
And in an earlier interview, Senator Howard Baker acknowledged his opponent as a tough candidate.
Well, she is a tough opponent, but, you know, any Democrat is a tough opponent for a Republican in Tennessee. Ms. Eskind's running a good race. She's been active, energetic, and she's a good candidate.
Eskind's camp feels it has chalked up one in the win column on the Tellico Dam issue, according to one aide. They said this time they showed Baker's misrepresentation of Tennesseans, and is not going to stop there. During the next few weeks, the spots and speeches will be more and more assertive.
Ever since the campaign began, I've been asking him to come and debate the issues and discuss the issues with the people of Tennessee, because I think that that's what they're entitled to, is to hear where he stands and where I stand. And I think you're going to see more of that.
Responsive on your part or his part?
Well, to be responsive on his part at all is to be more responsive. He has not been responding to the campaign. He's been addressing other issues in other parts of the country.
Eskind predicts the issues will decide the campaign, and in the closing weeks, the people will have to make a choice, her issues against Baker's. Samuetta Primus, Channel 4 News.
Our political analyst Floyd Kephart is with us tonight to continue the discussion of the U.S. Senate race. And Floyd, a lot of things are happening, not the least of which is the fact that the president is planning a visit to Nashville to, the publicity says, to help Butcher, but it's also going to have an impact on the Baker-Eskind race, I would assume.
I think it is, Dan. The fact of the matter is, when the president comes to town, it may be that the gauntlet will be thrown down by Senator Howard Baker against Jimmy Carter, and he may try to make this race one between he and the president. If that occurs, it will be very interesting to see what happens in Democratic politics. The fact of the matter is, Jake Butcher's coattails may be long enough to drag Jane Eskind in with him, or Jane Eskind's dress may be long enough to pull Jake Butcher in. No one really knows right now, but we do know this, that Jimmy Carter is going to be caught in the middle of two controversies when he comes to town. One is whether or not he's really campaigning against the minority leader of the United States Senate, his potential opponent in 1980, or whether he's here to help his old financial friend Jake Butcher. My guess is he's here to help both Butcher and Eskind, and that we will see the results of that shortly after that visit. Dan?
How much does a presidential visit affect a race like this?
Well, normally a presidential visit would not do a whole lot except solidify support, but because of the volatility of both the Senate race and the gubernatorial race, it could have a point different or a point spread in this, and it could get the people out to vote. And I think that when we really take a look at the race the last week of the campaign, that the major issue is not who's for whom, but how many people will vote on Election Day.
It's been a week or so since we've talked about polls. Have you seen any late Jane Eskind had closed the gap, or was considered dangerously close to Baker at one point. What are the latest polls showing?
The latest poll that I've heard about, and I have not read it yet, Dan, says that Jane Eskind is 8 points behind Howard Baker, and that the Butcher-Alexander race is very close. And I haven't seen those numbers, so I can't comment, but according to my source, Eskind is 8 points behind Baker. It's 48-40.
And as they say, the governor's race too close to call.
Too close to call, but we'll watch it a little.
Okay, thank you, Floyd. Lonnie?
Avco Aerostructures have
Thinking about our national defense program.
If I have to go, I sure hope we'll be prepared.
If we stay strong and keep our guard up, our boys can stay at home.
We Tennesseans believe in a strong defense, and that's why I voted for new advanced weapon systems. We need to keep our boys at home and off the battlefield.
When you vote, put Tennessee first.
His first joint meeting with all the negotiators. It had been billed as a chance to review progress in the talks and the remaining differences. But in a picture-taking session with the delegation chiefs, Mr. Carter was told by Israeli Foreign Minister Dayan about some problems. Whether you can obtain a change of position through the delegations here is very doubtful, said Dayan. It's not Camp David with the heads of state here. The president told Dayan, I recognize that is one of the serious
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
Campaigning in Tennessee is educational because we Tennesseans tell it like it is. These folks are concerned about efforts to weaken our defense by canceling the B-1 bomber and other essential defense programs. And most all agree that we need a major tax cut. These working men are concerned about federal policy on our shortage of energy because it affects their jobs. Tennesseans deserve to have their views represented forcefully on these important issues.
Put Tennessee first. Re-elect Senator Baker.
You know, as Sam said, talking politics can be fun, and tonight we hope to share some of that fun with you as we talk with the candidates themselves and with some of the campaign leaders who helped conceptualize the images of their candidates.
We will look at some of the media sales pitches, such as the TV ads we just saw, and we will try to analyze whether these commercials present the candidates as they really are or only as they wish to be perceived.
You know, in the commercials, the voters see Lamar Alexander, the sophisticated lawyer, in a red and black checkered shirt and walking boots he never wore to court. And it's legitimate to ask, Sam, whether that shirt and those boots are gimmickry.
Well, the same thing is true of Jake Butcher, John, a dapper banker who is seen strolling a blue jeans. And again, is
sometimes we may read into these visual presentations really more than the image makers intend. I suspect, for example, it's possible that Jake and Lamar are wearing that attire in these spots because they worry, or their image makers worry, that the common folk don't identify with bankers and lawyers.
John, I think it's more than a coincidence. It seems to me that they're trying to present themselves in roles that are acceptable to most Tennesseans. It appears that there really are very few major issues separating Jake and Lamar, and that race is boiling down to a personality contest. At the same time, in the Senate race, there seems to be an attempt to sell issues through the commercials.
You know, Jane Eskind, the Democrat, is, among other things, a housewife who wants the voters to know that she is called upon to go grocery shopping more often than her opponent and incumbent Senator Howard Baker. This particular commercial is designed to let the voters know that she's been to the counter and cash register in the supermarkets, and she feels the same pain the consumer feels.
John, the contrived use of groceries as a backdrop in that ad appears to be an ad man's attempt to help sell that message. I remember in Senator Baker in 1972 was depicted in the hallowed halls of Congress walking among the statues of the great leaders of our nation.
Since you took me in, and I know
A young family will be trying to make a life for themselves here. I don't know how they're going to do it. There's the mortgage, furniture, food, clothing, doctor bills, and maybe later college. The things they need the most cost the most. If we can contain those costs, we can give all families a chance to build their own future.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
This is one of the most expensive places to stay in Tennessee. Rooms here average $190 a night. If you need to stay here a month or longer, it could wipe out your whole life savings. National health insurance could ease that burden. Because if you have to stay here, money is the last thing you should be worrying about.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
If you have youngsters, you know that food is one of those purchases you just can't postpone. No matter how much grocery prices go up, you still have to buy food. The inflation fight has to start with the basics in life, because no one should be able to charge us whatever they want for the things we can't do without.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
Whenever I go shopping, I remember why I'm a Democrat. Our party's always been for the little guy. Right now, the Senate is deciding whether or not to take the lid off energy prices, or pass a health care plan, or how to change the tax laws. With all the powerful lobbyists in Washington, little guys need every vote they can get. They've got mine.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
There's danger on our highways. Deadly phosgene, explosive butane, radioactive wastes, rolling past our homes, our businesses, our schools. The state agency that's supposed to regulate trucks on our streets is the Public Service Commission. The person who wants to make sure they do is Jane Eskind. Jane Eskind, for the public, the Public Service Commission.
These days, we've all got to tighten our belts, consumers and businesses alike. The same goes for utilities. They're entitled to a fair return on their investment, but these are difficult times. When utilities raise their rates these days, a lot of people get hurt. The utilities are going to have to learn to tighten their belts, just like the rest of us.
Jane Eskind, for the public, the Public Service Commission. She led the most successful voter registration drive in the state's history. She worked with one organization to modernize Tennessee's election laws and another to streamline our courts. She serves on the board of the Nashville Urban League and works with a private agency to strengthen family life. Public service has been her whole life, a life she'll continue on the Public Service Commission. Jane Eskind, for the public, the Public Service Commission. Jane Eskind, for the public, the Public Service Commission.
By the time he graduates from high school, he will have spent 15,000 hours in front of his television set and only 11,000 hours in front of his teachers. We're in a war for our children's minds. To compete, Tennessee needs the best educational system we can get. I'm Jane Eskind, and I want to help us win that war in the United States Senate.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
Every 60 seconds, the federal government spends over $750,000. At this rate, by the end of the year, Washington will have spent $402 billion. I'm Jane Eskind, and I'm running for the Senate because I want to put a limit on federal spending. At the rate they're going, we can't waste another minute.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
In 1960, $20 went pretty far at the grocery store. By 1970, food prices had gone up nearly 27%, so your $20 didn't go quite so far. And this is what $20 buys today. Since 1960, food prices have jumped 230%. I'm Jane Eskind, and I'm running for the Senate because we can't afford to go on like this.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
You know, federal spending is really getting out of control. People aren't going to stand for the way we gave away the Panama Canal. That was downright criminal, the price of food these days. There's not enough
Jobs are what we need. I'd like to see a senator who knows what's on people's minds. I'm Jane Eskind. A good senator has to be more than a good talker. In Tennessee, a good senator has to be a good listener.
Jane Eskind, Democrat for the Senate, for Tennessee.
From the heart of the Mid-South, this is News Watch 2, Early Edition.
Good evening. The newest member of the state's powerful Public Service Commission today denied charges she is using the power of her office to help pay off her campaign debt. Complaints were called in today to News Watch about letters Jane Eskind sent out asking for money